What's up, Good Vibes gang? Brandon here, joined by Daniel.
Hello, we're here in person with each other. I can hug Brandon. I don't want to because you've been getting shocked by this chair a lot today. So I'm gonna just, I'm here for you.
Yeah, if I touch that camera, it'll probably zap it. Anyway, if you couldn't tell by our background, we're here to talk about Splatoon, specifically Splatoon 3 Expansion Pass Side Order, which we got to play 90-ish minutes of.
Yeah, and by we got to play 90-ish minutes of, we mean that Brandon got to play all 90-ish minutes of. But that's okay. I was there in spirit. I was watching, and we were asking the Nintendo reps questions, being guided through it, and you got a pretty meaty handle on this game, haven't you?
Yeah, so we started off with like a 10 to 20 minute tutorial kind of explaining how everything works before diving into the full experience. And for those who don't know, Side Order is a roguelike mode where you are climbing a tower floor by floor, defeating waves of enemies, completing objectives, and gaining power-ups to make yourself stronger.
Yeah, the tutorial really kind of held your hand with, you know, the concept of if you go to this floor, you can get this power up for your weapon, you can increase this feature with your weapon or your movement even, and then as you moved on higher and higher, like towards the end of the tutorial, it showed you how for each floor you're on, you have a choice of 3 different augmentations to acquire after you clear said floor. And like the tutorial was, it was something. It was a lot more than I thought it was gonna be.
Yeah, so the tutorial was 10 floors long, culminating in a boss fight. For the case of the tutorial, the actual power-ups were predetermined. But there was cool stuff. You have this palette full of, I think it's like 30 slots or something like that. And every floor you go up, like you said, you get to pick an augmentation and slot that into your palette, and it makes you stronger in some way. You can get abilities like Ink Saver, one that makes your explosions more potent, I want to say. There was even one that makes the effect of your ink larger. Or one that's really cool, homing ink.
Yeah, that was really, I saw some really unique applications of this as we were playing, even just watching you play, and also as the Nintendo representatives demonstrated for us in this preview event as well. And it really it kind of reminds me of when we're doing Salmon Run and you have the Grisco weapons. Like they completely they do things that they really shouldn't do. And if you play your cards right, if you get the right augmentations, you can get weapons that can do some really ridiculous things that can completely like break said floor and the whole concept of Side Order.
It was really cool watching the Nintendo rep play because he was using a charger. And he's using a charger in a way I've never seen before, because he had several power-ups that made his charge time shorter, as well as homing shots. I think he even had it leveled up a couple times.
Yeah.
He didn't even have to aim at the enemies, and charging took him like a quarter of a second. He was just going blah, 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 blah.
He was trying really hard to get that final upgrade for quick charge, and apparently if you have it all the way maxed up, you can just tap the button and you're shooting fully charged shots. And that's apparently just the tip of the iceberg of all the different kinds of variety of builds you can do with this. And even while we're there, they're really encouraging us to make as much of a broken build as possible, because there's a lot of room for experimentation, as you might expect from something that borrows from the roguelite formula, that structure.
Even going further, like there's damage numbers now. Like you can see how much damage your attacks are doing. For reference, like I think I started with dualies. That's what you use in the tutorial. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was like maybe 100 damage per tick on hit. And the Nintendo rep, when his power was fully charged up or fully maxed out, he was doing like 3,200 damage per shot, which is just ridiculous.
He had the one, I think it was a function where if you're closer, you do more damage, which is really, that's usually not how you play a charger. You want to be as far away as possible, but it encourages you to approach these weapons in ways that we've never seen in anything within the Splatoon trilogy thus far. And I think that's just really cool. It leads you to want to replay a lot, and you could replay this like infinitely, apparently, from what we've seen so far.
I mean, when you have 30 slots on your palette, there's so many different combinations you can have. And what's interesting too about when you pick those, not only are you picking the power up, you're picking the kind of stage you're going to play. the type of objective that you're going to do. Some of the objectives that I had to do were splat zones against enemy AI, where I had to hold the splat zone for X amount of time, and if they took it over, then obviously my timer would stop. There was one where I had to move infinite balls, not 8 balls, infinite balls.
Like this.
Kind of like in Super Mario Galaxy, you have to move them to the goal. But they're like really receptive to ink. You shoot them and they kind of glide, they're floating. So there was a couple instances where I'd hit one and it would just kind of snap to where it was supposed to go.
You were getting like hole-in-ones with this. You're playing golf out there with these balls, and you're just mowing down the enemies. Which do we know? We can the name of the enemies.
Jellytone? Gelatones? Gelatins. Yes, that's right. Not jellytones.
They have these gelatins have really unique designs. They're just they're skeletal, but they have like the inky slime around them, and there's a whole variety of them. They really. Some of them kind of borrow design aesthetics, and some of the feel itself feels like it comes from. It reminded me of Salmon Run, and it was essentially there were moments where it was looking like a single player Salmon Run, where you're just getting hordes of these gelatins coming after you.
Yeah, there were even like various enemy types that kind of are, synchronous with the salmonids. So like you have the little small fries. There was a version of that with these bony fish. There was these big dudes that took a lot of shots to take down, like way more than you would think. I was using Trizuka shots, and one shot of Trizuka wasn't enough to kill them.
We weren't going down.
Yeah. There was also like the sniper tower guys from Salmon Run. They were showing up as well. We haven't even seen like the vast majority of what the enemies are going to entail, as far as I know.
That's just the tip of the iceberg. And there's so much with the gameplay. There's so much with the story. We learned a little bit about the story, just a little bit. We saw Marina. She's in fact there. And boy, she's there.
Yep.
Pearl and Marina, obviously, they make their re-entrance here. We haven't seen them in so long. It's so nice to see them again after all this time. Very much fan favorites of the Splatoon community. And yeah, the whole way that they interact with everyone, it's really fascinating. And just the way that Pearl is with you as well, because she joins you. She's a part of your arsenal.
Yeah, it's the Pearl drone. So she is a drone robot, and what's interesting about her, she has various abilities. Primarily, when you're up in the air, you can use her to glide, like in Breath of the Wild. So when you actually enter a field or enter a stage, you're usually doing it from a cage. So you ride the cage up and then into the field. It gives you a nice overhead view of what you're going to deal with. And then you can float down with Pearl, so you can kind of be exactly where you want to.
There was so much verticality with this. Like there was with the little zip lines you shoot and you fly upwards. There's those boost pads that are against the wall that launch you skyward. There's some enemies that when you defeat them, they turn into a spring, and that gives you some height as well. Like there's a lot more focus on verticality because you have Pearl as your little glider there.
In my session, there was a lot of times where I got out of a sticky situation just because I flung myself up in the air away from all the enemies, and that felt really good, especially having the ability to float down. So I had a lot of control over where I ended up.
Yeah, I guess that kind of makes up for the fact like you can't super jump like normally you could.
Oh, that's true.
So there's no other way to kind of, there's no emergency escape route that way. So I guess that kind of makes up for it, huh?
Yeah. You also have a set number of lives over the course of the adventure, which is great because I mentioned this before, but when you're picking your power up or the stage you're going to play, they're listed by difficulty. And sometimes you would even get, I guess they're bonuses. So like one of the listings might say bonus, there'll be a bonus objective, and if you beat that objective, you'll get more reward.
You got some pretty funny ones, if I recall correctly.
So there was one mission type where you have to spray a turbine, and then it rides a path from beginning to end, kind of like tower control. The bonus objective I got on that was to not use my main weapon.
And you thought about it for a full 3 seconds, and you said, nah, and you started to just shoot it with your normal weapon.
I mean, how else was I gonna do it?
Sub-weapons and your special, there's like no other way to really do that. But I can tell, I guess there are some modes where you can make that happen, like maybe the splat zones, you can do it with just your sub-weapon, perhaps.
And your specials.
And specials, yeah. But there's some where it really isn't practical to do that whatsoever. So it's kind of a luck of a draw, it's a bit of a gamble. when you jump in those.
I mean, Pearl can even help you in situations like that. There was one point where the Nintendo reps got Pearl a killer whale upgrade, I want to say?
Yeah.
Or was
yeah,
that
I think
us? I can't remember.
So it was like some kind of sound upgrade, and so it augmented the killer whale. So it did help that out, I think.
And if you've played Octo Expansion, you know that Pearl uses the killer whale as a weapon. So she can actually use it in the game. She has this little laser sight that she's pointing at all times at enemies that she's helping you fight. Sometimes she'll be fighting a different enemy than you, which will help you kind of know where enemies are in relation to you. There were a lot of times in my demo where I was fighting an enemy or shooting one of the orbs for objective, only to turn my camera and there is a horde, a horde of enemies getting ready to end my life.
It's really useful because, like, every time you start a stage, you get a nice survey of the whole entire area. So you kind of get your grounds of like where the height, where the elevations are, where the dips are, where everything is. But when the battle starts, you kind of have just your front field of view. So having that laser point around and kind of confirming like, oh, there's danger in this direction or that direction, it can really pull you out of a bind if you're careful.
Yeah, and there are a lot of enemies to contend with. Like I was mentioning before, those levels will tell you how difficult they are before you go into them. So, you know, if you're feeling a little squeamish or whatever, you can choose to pick an easier one. Reward will be less. Maybe the upgrade you get is worse, but the actual objective won't be as hard.
Yeah.
There are a few levels of objectives. There's easy, normal, hard, and rigorous.
I think we came only across a single rigorous one. Was it only one?
It was one rigorous, and it was like 3 or 4 levels into the run. It was the only one we saw. I did attempt it, and I did beat it within like 30 seconds. I felt really good about it.
And then the representative was like, oh, you got kind of lucky with the layout and the kind of objective with what they had. I'm just like, but he did it. So to be fair, there was one that was on hard, and that one gave you a lot of trouble, more so than rigorous.
Yeah, it was further up the tower, so I guess things do get a little bit spicier as you go.
Yeah.
So even if you pick a lower difficulty objective, it might just be worse anyway. One other interesting thing we saw was sometimes you wouldn't get like a bonus on one of your choices, but it would say danger.
As far as I remember what the representative told us, when they showed danger, apparently as you continue on higher and higher, that danger, if you don't address it and challenge that right away, it will come back later, and I assume that it'll fill more out as you go along. So just like in real life, you need to deal with your problems now, or they'll come back to you later.
To get to permanent upgrades here in a second, one of them that we saw lets you re-roll your choices before you go into a level. Apparently if danger is there and you re-roll, it doesn't go away.
Uh-oh.
So the objective might change, but the danger is going to stay there.
Oh my god, and you challenged that one right away.
I did, and it was legitimately difficult.
Was it the one that you couldn't use Pearl in it, right? Was that at least one of them? So you couldn't hover, you couldn't use like the little laser sight. That hinders you a lot more than you think when you start.
It was the only one in my whole run that actually lost a life on.
Yeah, that's right. Wow.
And speaking of permanent upgrades, if it weren't for permanent upgrades, that would have ended the run for me.
Yeah, you were able to. It was your lives, right? Obviously.
Yeah.
You start off with just one, but there's a variety of different upgrades you can get, and lives was one of them. And they recommended you do that first because if you just go right in with one life, you lose and that's it. You get no more tries. So there's definitely some upgrades that you can lean towards more than others. It depends how comfortable you are as a Splatoon player, what you want to prioritize over others.
So the way you get upgrades is by spending, was it pearls?
Yeah, pearls with a Z.
PRLZ pearls. So you get pearls by the amount of upgrades you get during a run, as well as how much money you've made on your run. And that all gets exchanged for pearls after you lose or win. Then you take those pearls and you get permanent upgrades. This is the real meat of the experience, if you ask me.
Yeah, you can really, there's so many different ways to customize because you'll have different weapons, as we mentioned, to customize with, and your ascension to the tower will vary depending on how you upgrade as well. And there's just so much replayability with this. There's a lot of different features on here that we want to talk about as well that we'll just have to wait a little bit longer for. But yeah, man, like what was your favorite aspect that you played? Because you played this for a good while. Like what's your favorite thing about Splatoon 3's side order that you can recall?
I think it just boils down to that customization. Like, there's so much freedom in how you approach the game because of your choice in upgrades, your choice in permanent upgrades, even the weapon you bring in. Like, no run is going to be like the one before it.
Yeah.
Because there's RNG involved, as well as just how you're feeling in the moment. Maybe one time you're going to focus on just attack power and how much damage you're doing, or maybe you're going to focus on how much ink you're saving. Or you're going to put all of your energy into Pearl and make her stronger.
Yeah, that's a legitimate way to go through it as well. There's so many aspects I can look at. Like, there's things you can earn afterwards. There's like a locker. There are lockers there. We can't mention anything else with the lockers, but there's lockers.
There are lockers.
But man, yeah, I'm really excited to play it, to actually get my hands on it as well for myself, because I'm watching you do it and I'm thinking of all these different builds that I can do as well. Because after you did the tutorial, you chose the splatter shot. Another one there was the Brella. I would have chose the Brella because I kind of use it every now and then, and I can imagine like using it as a shield can help you in certain aspects and certain spots, because everyone's just charging at you all the time, non-stop.
Actually, the reason I went with Splatter Shot was not because of the Splatter Shot. It was because of the Splat Bomb.
Oh,
I am a Splat Bomb fiend. You actually saw there was a couple instances where Splat Bombs got me out of danger. I think it was one of the Portal Destroyer missions, and there was these. Oh no, it was a turbine, and there was huge gaps in the road, if I remember right. But the huge gaps between the platforms were these like speed ramps where you run on them that just slings you to the other side.
Yeah.
There were a bunch of enemies on the platform I needed to get to. So I threw a splat bomb on the ramp and it shot over to the other side and blew them up as I was making my way over there. And that just felt incredible.
That looked intense. I can't wait for this. I'm looking very much forward to Side Order, and we're not that far away from it now. I'm very excited. It's a busy month.
February 22nd is when this comes out, and if you liked Octo expansion, if you like Splatoon at all, I think you're gonna want to dive in on this.
It's gonna go in hard, I think, just from what we've seen thus far. There's some moments already that I saw was like, wow, people are gonna have a reaction to this when they see what happens. And just the fact that, you know, we're exploring this world again, just the aesthetic. I love the look of it when we're playing it. Like, I'm sure everyone's been watching the B-roll from here, but the aesthetic of this is so nice and clean. It's very monotone for a reason. Everything is done here for a reason, and I'm excited for people to find out what exactly that is. But yeah.
So you're gonna have to wait until February 22nd to see what Splatoon 3 Side Order is all about. But until then, I hope you've enjoyed this quick preview of it, and thanks to Nintendo for having us out and getting to try it. But until then, keep the games good, the vibes greater.
So we meet again.
Bye.
It's a good boy.
He really is.